Hey everyone, Carmen here, digital editor at Ms. And I am with the one and only Jamia Wilson today. Hi, it's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. And so I'm always starting these interviews with inception stories, but I feel like your story is one with so many, like, you have just done so many things. You have such a wealth of experience in so many different areas of activism and feminism. And I'm so curious that you're in this role now at the Feminist Press. You're in charge, you're running stuff, and you're really revamping what the Feminist Press is doing and what the Feminist Press is. And I'm just curious as to how you see, like, what led you there, what led to this.
So the Feminist Press has always been a part of my life. I grew up with the books in my home. My mom had various Feminist Press books that influenced me growing up.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's everything kind of comes full circle in a feminist life.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to New York, I had interviewed for a position at the Feminist Press, and at the time had some changes in my life. I went to grad school, wasn't able to take it, but still was really struck with the love that I received from the executive director at that time, Gloria Jacobs, who had connected with me and still wanted to make sure that I could stay engaged, even though I wasn't able to take the position at the time. And that always left an impact on me about her feminist practice and the Feminist Press. And then years later, when Jennifer Baumgartner was the director, she had an event with a lot of different writers from the new edition of Some of Us Are Brave, which is an intersectional Black feminist anthology that my mom had the original version of. And Jennifer invited me, along with the team, invited me to be on a panel and moderate a panel with Brittany Cooper and other amazing writers who were talking about the impact of this anthology and some of the initial editors. And it was just a really special experience. And so when the position was open and Jennifer was saying that she was moving on to her next chapter, pun intended, she had been someone who had just said, hey, have you thought about the Feminist Press as an opportunity for your next role? And I remember thinking, oh, wow, if I were to do that, I think I would be the youngest person who'd done the role, and a woman of color, and that would be a big thing. But I want to put my hat in the ring, and I thought, no matter what happens, I'm going to do it because the intersection of literary activism, feminist activism, intersectional work, and all of that really appeals to me as a writer and an activist who has always kind of had to figure out how to navigate being all of those things in specific spaces that might be focused on one of those things. And so it just felt like it was in alignment with my purpose. And when they did say that we want to invite you to join in this way, I just had a dream come true, and it was really exciting and really felt like, wow, all of the things I've been working toward in the past 20 years of my life have come into fruition, which was really exciting.
Oh, that's really amazing. And I love that you talked about them staying in touch, because I mean, we met many moons ago, and I actually worked at the Feminist Press one day as a soapbox feminist camper, and literally stayed in touch with them forever. And it always made affectionate towards them too, because I was just sort of like, oh, thank you for keeping me in the orbit. That's how putting that feminism in practice. And I'm curious too what your vision for the press is now that you're at the helm, and what direction you're hoping to take it in, especially in this current moment, and sort of what you think the role of feminist media is right now.
So right now we're nearing our 50th anniversary. So we're in our 48th year of life. I'm 38. So it's really profound for me to think about what it means to be running an organization along with this amazing team, amazing board that is older than my life, and also thinking about our founder, who's still very much connected to our work and a champion for what we're doing, who's turning 90 in March, Women's History Month, and thinking about the future of feminism, and specifically the future of feminist publishing in a landscape where you see now the conversation about feminism is at the forefront, as we know, for all of the different cultural and systemic reasons why, in the age of Time's Up and Me Too and all of those things. But also thinking about what we've been doing for almost 50 years and the way we've been doing it, knowing that that will remain beyond any sort of upswing of fad that might happen in corporate spaces or in traditional publishing spaces, not in indie ones. And so we're really thinking about, what does it mean to be a feminist publisher in a context of feminism always being the most important word versus what it meant for Merriam-Webster to anoint it as the most important word last year, and us saying, well, that was always our favorite word. And when Florence first started the press, she didn't think the feminist press would need to exist at this point because she thought that the rest of the world would have caught up by now. And so when I think about the future, it's really about thinking about making sure that we continue to push for a more diverse industry, that we can serve as a springboard for diversifying the publishing industry and make sure that people whose voices aren't at the table across the board are engaged in all of the stages of book publishing and book engagement. So we also are connecting around activism and advocacy and really talking about what does it mean for books to inspire action and for those actions to reverberate beyond the page. And also intersectionality, which has always been a part of the press, just deep diving into it in a deeper way because we have a team that is super intergenerational, and many of the people on our team are younger than myself who are wanting to talk about the issues of our times in ways that our foremothers also paved for us, are the more risky, radical, and controversial topics that won't be elevated in other spaces. And so we're really committed to truth telling, as you are as well, and also elevating voices, feminisms that are in conversation with each other, that might not always be in agreement with each other, but deserve to be heard.
Yes, and that is we have a lot in common in that way, and I love that you're leading the conversation in this way, in this role. And you also had quite a busy year as an author. The Women's March anthology, Together We Rise, you were at the spearhead of that, and your book Roadmap. What do you see in this moment as next steps for the folks on the ground, for the activists who are doing this kind of work in their communities? I think one of the themes of NWSA this year is this idea of imagining new feminist futures and imagining a radical politic for the future. And I'm curious as to what you think that looks like and how you think we get there.
Yeah, I really believe in the fact that movements come up from the ground up. And I really want that to be the focus. I think that part of what we're seeing in our society right now comes from a loss of sight of what the collective and what community can do together in collaboration. And so I think about what I think are the problems with the soul of this country and thinking about what's the opposite reaction to those reactions that are making us sick, is the way that I see it. The salve for alienation is collaboration. The salve for individualism is community building and movement building. And so really thinking about that as the ways we can solve our problems, to think, oh, we actually do have the solutions and we have them in our communities, and the people who have answers to them are the people who are closest to the issues that we care about. And I think we're going to see more of that. March for Our Lives, that is why we saw this unprecedented movement of young people. Black Lives Matter, the same thing. The Women's March, so many examples of this, that we are in a moment of reckoning and we're saying we are the ones who have inherited a lot of problems that were not of our own making, but who know what needs to be done, and we need support in order to do that important work. And I think the actions of people right now will inform the next 100 years and then many generations beyond that, if we think about it. And that's why I think that, although it's a scary time when you think about the Supreme Court and everything else, that just our actions, our consciousness, our conscience in this moment, the next step that we choose to take in any given moment with long-term vision but intention and deliberateness will impact the next 100 years. And so I think that the people who are doing that work right now very much understand that. And I think that that is something that gives me hope.
Awesome. I love that. And, I'm just wondering too, sort of, as you're balancing all of this stuff, and there is a lot of reason to be hopeful, but there is also all of this reason to, feel pretty despondent out there. And so what are the books and feminist media that are fueling you right now, or maybe some of the books that have sort of fueled you throughout your journey as sort of the feminist publisher in chief?
So, I love Brittany Cooper's book, Eloquent Rage. Our Crunk Feminist Collection is a book that I teach for my students at John Jay. Those are books that are getting me through. Helen LaKelly Hunt's And the Spirit Moved Them is a book that reminds us that before Seneca Falls, there was an intersectional, spirit-driven movement that was largely comprised of women of different races that met before Seneca Falls and was a feminist collaborative movement. Is a book that gives me a lot of hope and inspiration that we have a roadmap for where we should move. There's so many. Soraya Shamali's book, Rage Becomes Her, Traster's book, Getting Mad, many. I read Ms. regularly, Bust Magazine, Bitch, all of those magazines that got me through. Rookie Magazine, which is a magazine that I love and write for, but also have learned so much and have gained so much respect from the wisdom of people younger than myself to teach me how to truly lead. This isn't a book, but something that I rely on to get through in this moment is Call Your Girlfriend. So yes. Amina and Anne and just their voices and the books that they elevate and the people they elevate give me so much inspiration and this sense of knowing the system is the problem, not me, to solve for the isolation and alienation, and also just such sharp analysis with humor and a little bit of joyful defiance. I love all of it. And I also just really think that there's so much beautiful social media commentary. So the textual analysis, I'm bringing it to that too, of just people who are thought leaders who I follow online, like people who I only know by their avatar or their names, who I'm kind of saying, oh, I want to hear what they have to say about this issue today. I want to know what their response is going to be, their expression of their humanity. It's exciting to me. So I'm just making sure that I'm curating the kind of media around me that keeps me inspired. And those are the kinds of text, but also other forms of media that I'm engaging with every single day. And I also say, Refinery 29, there's some amazing editors there, Glamour, Elle, places that I've written where they have editors who are really, and Teen Vogue, also love to write there, led by my friend and just amazing co-conspirator Samita Mukhopadhyay, that are just breaking new ground in corporate publishing to be elevating the issues that we care about. And so I'm also reading and supporting those spaces and writing when I can as well.
Awesome. And you talked a little bit just now about sort of bringing these works into the classroom. And that's part of what we seek to do at Ms. with our Ms. Classroom program and with our Committee of Scholars. And one thing I do love about the Feminist Press is that it is sort of making feminist theory digestible and fun to read and something you can carry around with you, and something that feels a lot more like a part of your real life and not something that, is just being discussed in a classroom. And so how does that interplay for you work between academia and activism in that part of your life?
I feel like I really need to have a life that feels like it's in alignment and flow. And one of the things that I found challenging when I was, just in a context where I was in my master's program and working, but not necessarily writing, or when I've been in activist spaces where there's not been much commentary about, the world of ideas and exploration of theory and possibility and nuance, that I think that there is a different place where we can reside, where all of those undivided realities can be together. And that to me is where truth is and where truth lives. So I try to embody it and to push up against other people's discomfort of it at all times. And so I have, I've seen, depending on who you're talking to in, certain academic spaces I've been in, I've had some people critique me for being like, oh, it's a little too much like pop culture, a little bit too much media driven, or a little bit too much TED Talk versus scholarship, or people who might say, oh, well, it's too academic for you to go on a media show and use a word like intersectionality. You need to somehow dilute it so that people can get the soundbite, right?
Oh my
and
God.
Neither of those things are the truth, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things I want to do, even though I do sometimes come up against my own imposter syndrome or my own feeling of scarcity of being punished for pushing up against that, is to say we can be all those things. We can have all the curiosities. We don't have to be living in these segmented silos. Humanity isn't actually built to be like that. We live in nuance and complexity. And anyone who tries to be either of those things or tells you that that is not true is repressing something. And I think we're seeing the emission of what happens when things are confined. So that's what I love about Feminist Press, is that we have an academic journal and we have a narrative verse book about death and life, and we have graphic novels, and we have art manifestos, and we have amazing fat positive manifestos, like You Have the Right to Remain Fat by Virgie Tovar, which is an amazing, powerful book that changed my mind in so many ways. And so I just think I like the idea of doing things differently, even if it means that you're having a vision that other people might not be ready to settle in yet because it's uncomfortable, that we live in a society that teaches us to isolate, to segment, to silo, and that isn't actually how nature works.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm also trying to bring in terms of how we strategize.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here with me and talking with me and being with all of us. And congratulations on the new role still. I'm still so excited that you're there.
Thank you.
And
thank you for all you do.
Oh my
it's
God.
been an honor for me to just watch you like in your ascension and truth and power. It's been beautiful.
Oh, it's mutual. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning in. I'll be back, and keep up with Jamia, and I'll put links to where you can find out more about her and all of her work, and she can become one of your favorite Twitter avatars too.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Talk soon.